the Black Knight satellite is this object that is actually orbiting the Earth right now. What's interesting is the mainstream knew it was there for a very, very long time. They're trying to say it was a space blanket.
What's a space blanket?
Inside of the ISS, there's this area where you have these trunnion pins, and you have this kind of a heat protection blanket that goes on 2 trunnion pins. It's about, from me to you, and about maybe this wide. So they're trying to say that thing floating through space is that. We actually do a comparison, and so this is an object that they estimated one time on NASA at 15 tons. Now, when it first was discovered in more recent times, in the 80s, NASA and Soviet Union went on high alert. Russia went on high alert. They were like, wait a minute. They thought we were both doing something to each other from space, and they realized—
nuke orbiting the Earth.
Right. But they said, wait a minute, we can't launch 15 tons. And they were like, well, we can't launch 15 tons, but what is this thing? So they flew by it with an STS mission, a space shuttle mission, and took high-definition photos, which are still on nasa.gov today.
Oh, you can find them online?
They're right on nasa.gov. NASA labeled it space junk.
Really?
So nobody wants to touch this thing. They don't want to say what it is, but it's been there for a long time. How do we know this? First of all, Nikola Tesla claims to have received a signal from this object. This is a long time ago now. We're talking about the late 1800s.
How did he know that he was receiving signals from this thing?
First, he thought it was from Mars. Then he thought it might have been from something much closer to Earth. But back then, when he was getting these radio signals from space, because this thing is emitting a signal, a frequency, there was nothing else here. There was nothing, no satellites. We had no technology except for what he was making. So what was this frequency? So he then assumed it might have been coming from something much closer. Then in 1953, 2 ham radio operators picked up this same frequency, and they began to mark it down, take note of what the frequency was and the tones. They didn't know what it was either, but it was coming from outside. Then in 1960, it made Time magazine. What was interesting is in 1960, Russia and America began the space race just before that, and Russia was building Sputnik, already had 1 going up. So all eyes were in space around the low Earth orbit, trying to figure out how do we get something to orbit this planet. And during this process, another astrophysicist, Duncan Lunan, said this thing is real and it has a frequency coming out of it. And he deciphered the frequency and said it was leading to the Epsilon. It was saying Epsilon Boötis constellation, or Boötis constellation Epsilon, which is pretty interesting. Fast forward again, an NSA document gets released and declassified talking about the fact that how to communicate with ET. And it talks about these frequencies coming from space, and it says Boötis constellation, Boötis Epsilon. So I started looking up. There's a constellation called the Boötis constellation, and in this constellation, there's the largest void that we know of. A void meaning not even space dust is in this area. It goes on for light years. So I'm looking at that now. I go, how in the world can there be nothing in this space?
There's like dark matter, or
just nothing?
Not even dark matter.
Michio Kaku hypothesized that it might be an advanced cloaked civilization. I said, what? So now I start digging deeper. I go, wait a minute. I look into ancient texts. Now I'm like, this got to be something here. I said, who owns the Boötis? And it says Enlil. And Wikipedia, of all places, which they can't stand to put anything out that gives you any inkling of real knowledge. Everything is pseudoscience. Right, but they had sources that led back to real tablets that said this, so they had to list it. The sources are on, there. So it went back to real tablets. So the Boötis constellation and Epsilon is attributed to the ownership of Enlil. When you look at these tablets, well, that didn't surprise me, because these people, these Anunnaki people, they own planets, they own moons and everything. He owns the constellation. And so, or maybe he rules over it in some weird way. So I said, this is crazy. So when you start analyzing, okay, let me go back. Ancient texts are saying war, they left, they fled. Would they have possibly dropped a probe in orbit to watch us and monitor us and transmit back to them what's going on here since they left? This thing was in a polar orbit. We couldn't do a polar orbit at the time this was discovered in a polar orbit in 1960. We couldn't do a polar orbit.
Yeah, all the satellites orbited the equator.
That's right. And a polar orbit, what does it give you? It gives you the ability to see everything going on the planet, because as you orbit around the planet polar, pole to pole, and the planet rotates on its axis, you can take swaths of data from the planet, topographical data, resource data, human population data, everything, and then you can make you can put it into a computer and you can see exactly what's going on. Enlil had something called an all-seeing eye, where he knew everything going on the planet at one time. And I'm saying that only way you can do it was with a polar orbiting satellite. That's the only way you can actually do that. It all started to make sense to me. So it became a big hypothesis. So I started researching it deeper, and then I got some experts together, and that's why I made the Black Knight Satellite documentary. I believe that this thing is transmitting information back to Boötis via quantum entanglement communication. Because Boötis is light years away, so that means it would take a long time at the speed of light. However, if you quantum entangle with a communications device back at Boötis, you can transmit the information instantaneously. And the reason why I believe they won't touch this thing is because what if it has a self-destruct mechanism or some type of a defense mechanism that we don't know of? We don't want to activate it. We don't want to touch it. What if it says, hey, they're messing with me, and all of a sudden here comes the cavalry. So they just leave it alone. Don't touch it. It ain't doing nothing to us. We ain't doing nothing to it. But interestingly, the location of Boötis from that frequency is the location it was in the sky due to the precession of the equinoxes 13,000 to 14,000 years ago or so. So this thing could potentially be 13 to 14,000 years old, which is right around the time of the Younger Dryas incident on Earth.
Now, we don't know, though. I mean, if we could study it with like a drone, couldn't we? Couldn't we send like some sort of other satellite that was remote controlled up there to get kind of close to it and follow it? And
I'm pretty sure you can. I mean, it depends on how close they allow you to get. They meaning, they have their own self-defense. They have that Stargate system. They can defend anything they want in space. And probably, if you don't go on up your particular approved flight plan, they might just blow you out of the sky. Whatever you send up there.
Right.
They'll give you can get an approved flight path, but I doubt that you can rendezvous with this thing. People would have done it by now.
That is freaky, man.
Yeah. But it's there. It's up there, it's orbiting the planet, and it's changed course a couple times. So this thing, maybe it's got AI in it. It's intelligently controlled in some way. These people are a million years ahead of us. They're a million years ahead of us technologically. So we've got so much learning to do, and the best thing to do is just don't even touch it.